Hey there, my name's Pete and I like pictures. Welcome back to Lightroom, and in this video I'd like to tell you a bit about the adjustment brush. The probably most versatile tool that we have in Lightroom, and it's sort of the big brother of the graduated filter and the radial filter, because it does everything that those two filters can do and even more. And I'll show you that. So we have, of course, a keyboard shortcut that is the letter K. So by pressing K, we open and close the tab for this filter. And of course, like with all filters or all tools, we can reset the adjustments by holding down the Alt key option on Mac and click on Reset. And then close it, and then these new settings are default. So I'll repeat that. I talked about that in a previous video. All tools, if you open a tool, change things, and then close it, and then open it again, these changes are default. If you apply a tool, like so, and then change something, and then close it again, then open it again, we're back at the original default. So opening a tool, changing something, closing it, and then opening it again, these are the defaults. Okay, we'll reset that, and then we will talk about all of the settings that we have. You see, we have a lot of sliders. We have, of course, presets for these sliders. Check them out. That's always a good resource to learn. Checking out presets. Also those presets in the preset tab. What do they do? What do they change? So, and then it's really a cool thing to learn about all of the settings that we have in Lightroom. We have temperature, tint, so we can change the white balance. Exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, clarity, saturation, sharpness, noise, moire, defringe. I talked about them in a previous video when I was talking about the graduated filter and the radial filter, so I won't talk about them again in this video. And I will also not talk about noise, moire, and defringe, because I will make a separate video about noise. I will most definitely make a separate video. Well, I will make a separate video about moire and defringe, but I have to find an appropriate photo first. So what does the adjustment brush do? The name says it. You can adjust things. You can adjust your photo, and you can adjust it locally by painting in the photo with a brush. That's basically it. Okay, you can, of course, change the size of the brush with the size slider or with a mouse wheel. You can change the feathering, so how soft the brush is, with a feather slider, or by holding down the Shift key and using the mouse wheel. Then we have flow, auto mask, and I see it's checked. We will uncheck that now. And we have density. What do these sliders do? And then, of course, we have brush A and brush B, so you can work with two different brushes. You can make presets for two different brushes. And you have an erase button. I will talk about that in a minute. So what is flow and what is density? Well, let's put the exposure down to -4 so I can show you. Or no, let's make -2, probably better. -2 means 2 f-stops. So I'll paint the brush stroke. And you see the flow and the density as at 100. And 100 in that case means 100%. So because you can set it down to 1 or to 100. If I go over this paint stroke I already made, you see no difference. Because, well, I paint with 100% of that -2 f-stops. Okay. I can, of course, make the area bigger, and you see that's what the adjustment brush does. I create masks. I create areas that are affected by these sliders. So I'll remove that. I'll remove the pin, and I set the flow to 50. So 50% of that minus 2 f-stops. And I make a paint stroke, and you see the area gets darkened less. Only 50%, so only 1 f-stop. But if I go over it again, then another 50% are applied, and another 50% are applied, another 50% are applied, until I reach the final minus 2. So the flow amount is sort of the opacity of that brush. It's a bit like working with real paint. So if you paint over an area again and again and again, the opacity is increased. So if you darken an area, you can really gradually darken it the way you want it. So we'll remove that. We set the flow back to 100 and now set the density to 50. It's also 50%. So we can paint in the 50%. Minus 1 f-stop. And I'll paint over it again. And you see nothing changes. It stays. So density defines the maximum amount. Why is that useful? I'll show you. Set back the flow, the density to 100, and set the flow to 50. So for example, I want to darken the whole hill minus 2 f-stops. Or say no. Yeah, exactly. I was switching back to German almost. So I want to darken the whole hill. And you see, if I don't work really exactly, then I'll leave out parts. And if I want to darken them, then my brush goes over areas that I have already darkened. So these areas get darkened more. And that's something I don't want sometimes. Sometimes I want it, sometimes I don't want it. So with the flow amount, with the density amount, I can restrict my brush to a certain density. So I set the flow back to 100 and set the density to 50. So I'll paint in. And I'll paint in here, and I see, okay, I left out that area, and I paint in again, and the area that is already darkened does not get darkened more. This is really a useful thing. I know this might be a bit complicated to just listen to see it. Play around with that. It's really a useful thing. So if you want to have uniform areas, you can do that with the density. So now you see, I painted over that edge here. What can we do? We can zoom in here first and then erase that. The erase brush is a third brush. It has own settings, and we can just erase. You see the little plus sign in the middle of our brush changed to minus. So if I go back to the A brush, you see there's a little plus, and if I switch to erase, there's a little minus. If you don't want to click, you can also hold down the Alt key or Option on Mac, so you can change between the brush and the erase tool. So that is basically it. No, it's not, because there's one more thing to the adjustment brush, and that is the auto mask. What does auto mask do? I already showed you. I'll show you again. I want to paint. I want to darken the hill. So I paint over, and they say, wow, yeah, now I painted over the edge. I don't want that. And I don't want to erase. Sometimes erasing parts is really a tedious work. So I can activate the auto mask and see what it does. AutoMask detects edges. And you see, well, sometimes the edge detection does not really work very well. Here it works quite okay, and in some parts it doesn't really work quite okay. The problem with the AutoMask is you cannot adjust it. Lightroom does what it does, and if it works, well, it works. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So while we're zoomed out, this kind of works. Now we zoom in and we see those nasty edges. That's a bit of a problem. We can, of course, uncheck the box and hooray, hooray, density set to 50. We will not darken areas that are already darkened, and we can refine that by doing so. Another problem with the AutoMask is, and I show you on the hilltop, I hope it works. So I want to darken, oops, I want to darken the sky. And I'll keep, you see, I keep outside the mountain with a plus, and that's the important thing. And there's something, this brush sometimes creates fringes, like those bright fringes. So that's also something, sometimes it works very well, sometimes it doesn't. I usually try to avoid it because of these problems. When we're zoomed out, yeah, you can still see it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's basically how it works. There's one more thing to the adjustment brush, and that is I want to see the areas that are affected. And you can do that by mouse overing one of these pins, and you see the areas change to red. Same here. Areas change to red, so you see what you affected. You can delete the pins, and I remove AutoMask. There's this little checkbox on the bottom, show selected mask overlay. So I can even reset that. And I can say I paint in here. You see the red mask shows us what is or what will be affected by our sliders. For example, contrast, exposure. The problem is we don't see it when we have the mask selected. So we have to uncheck that. So that's the mask. And then we have show edit pins, always. It is set to always. I create some edit pins. A new one, of course, here, and a new one here. Show edit pins always. When when I have the adjustment brush open, I see all pins all of the time. Sometimes I don't want that, so I can choose never. I don't see them. Or I can choose always. I always see them. Or I can choose auto. And I see them, and if I leave the area here, the photo area, they disappear. Sometimes some people like that. I have always selected to, it's my workflow. Because when I leave the dialog, the pins disappear anyway. So I don't need this auto thing. And then we have show edit pins selected. Only the selected ones will be shown. But the problem is when none is selected, I can't even activate them because I don't know where they are. So I have to toggle through this with the letter H, or I can click here. So for example, to auto, so I can select one and then I can choose selected and only this one will be visible. So that's the deal with the adjustment brush. That's how it works, and I don't want to go any deeper. I will make a video about working with the adjustment brush, how I work with the adjustment brush. It will be some sort of a screencast with me working on a photo, and you see how often and how intensely I use the adjustment brush. So this one's for today. Bye. Till next time.